Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. James is back in the chair. I always bring James in when it comes to this kind of stuff. There's a new introduction of a fee, which we're going to go through shortly. We're going to do a shared screen. I think James said he'd done over 40 hours, if I'm correct in putting this together, right?
Yeah, obviously the writing part was only a couple hours, but it was really about the back-end research, the math, etc.
So before we get into it, because we're going to do a shared screen, should we give the audience a little bit of an overview, what we're covered in and why it's important to sit and watch along and understand what's going on for the benefit of their own business?
Absolutely. We all know that Amazon has what feels like an infinite number of fees, and most of them we're used to, whether it's FBA fees or referral fees. And if they increase 10% in a year or 5%, then we just raise our prices. But I think this fee is especially interesting because it isn't just like a flat 5% increase. It's very complex. It's very mathematical. And of course, Amazon, while they do have help pages, they release what they feel like releasing. They are not obligated to release it in a way that makes sense. And they only release the information that they want to release. So there's a lot of kind of reading between the lines and actually figuring out, okay, this fee exists. How do I optimize against it?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get into it.
Cool. So for those that want to review the article, I'm sure there'll be a link out there,
And I'll put it in the
marketplaceprep.com
show notes below as well.
/low-inventory-fee. Little infographic here. This might help some people. I have another one on like Instagram and stuff like that. It's basically showing you the timeline for this. It's a future fee. It's not a retroactive fee. So it's taking this data and applying it to the future sales. So while I'm not going to read this word for word, I will try to break down each section. This is the first time a fee is really affecting people's cash flow, not just an expense on their sales. Normally an FBA fee is only incurred when you sell the product. Well, this is a fee that, yes, it's incurred at different intervals, etc., but it's also forcing you to hold more stock. So if you normally stock 30 days of inventory at Amazon, then you're going to have to boost your stock levels up, which will require more capital. It's not just an expense, it's also capital intensive. For those that tend to stock way more than that, it'll be less of an issue, but not a non-issue because there are a lot of caveats to that. We'll start with how is this fee applied? As I said in the image, it is applied based on historical data to the future. A lot of people are saying, well, what if I run out of stock? Well, you don't get charged the fee. This fee is incurred. It's applied to future orders based on historical stock levels. Every order after the recalculation period, which is typically like that Sunday night, Monday morning, midnight, where a lot of other calculations are changed. It calculates then, and it's stuck that way for an entire week. So if you dip below the 28-day requirement, you're going to be paying that fee for every single unit that you sell between now and next Monday, which could be substantial. That's why I put like some notes in here. You'll see 7-day test or 7-day buffer. That's your 7 days. This fee never applies retroactively. So like if you historically dip below or whatever for a little bit, the idea is it's only taking the historical information to determine how to apply it into the future. And then one other curveball is Amazon does not calculate these metrics daily. So you're going to have to plan some of it on your own, and their data that they're giving us, whether it's the minimum stock levels that they're putting in the Manage FBA inventory page or your recommended restock recommendations, all of those things, while they could be adjusted slightly, it's not perfect. And lastly, it's at the parent ASIN. So if that wasn't confusing enough, if you have clothing or multi-packs or multi-style products that are all in one variation, your math gets even more complex because they're not taking it at the child ASIN level, the individual product level. They're taking it across the entire parent ASIN. This can be very, very advantageous, but this can also be very, very challenging depending on your situation. So, a little infographic. If you pass one of these checkboxes, average stock over 90 days, 30 days, or you have a brand new ASIN, this is not brand new to you. This is brand new to Amazon. Or if you use AWD. Now, I won't go heavily into AWD in this article or in this conversation because there is a lot of pros and cons to that. Usually AWD will wipe out a lot of savings because of their transfer fees. You're not just paying for storage, you're also paying to transport it, you're paying per case, you're paying per cubic foot as well. So won't get into that now, but we'll exclude those and focus on the 30-day and 90-day rule. Without getting too crazy in the math, and you can look at some of the detailed math on Amazon's help page, which is linked at the bottom of this article. Every week, Amazon will calculate your past available, reserved, outside like customer orders and unsellable, into FC transfer units. And what that's really saying is what's at Amazon and somewhat ready to sell, and calculate your average stock for that week. Now, this is very, very challenging for people because other metrics on Amazon, such as the capacity monitor and like stock limits, etc., rely on inbound units plus available. So if you create the shipment today, your capacity monitor gets filled up. But this fee does not count anything that is inbound. It only counts it upon check-in. They will also calculate the number of units sold that week. And what they're doing is just trying to get a rough sell-through in days of supply and say, hey, if you sell 1 unit a day and you have 50 units in stock on average, so you were starting at 75 and now you're down to 25, you averaged about 50 days of stock. But that's a very simple manner, and nothing sells exactly the same amount of units every single day perfectly because we're in the world of Amazon. 90-day is the same exact thing as the 30-day rule. It just stretch over 90 days. And what Amazon's really looking for is are both or one of these rules above 28 days? And they want it to stay that way because what they're trying to do is mitigate that rapid transfer cost across the United States, and it lowers their cost and unfortunately is going to raise your cost of holding that much inventory. So the data, Amazon provides you with only one piece of data, which is so helpful when there is multiple pieces of data. Not. They will only provide you the greater of 30 or 90-day historical days of supply on the Manage FBA inventory page. They will not provide you both, so you don't know. This is extremely challenging. That's why I suspect that other tools will be coming out soon stating these metrics on their own, and it's only calculated every 7 days, as I discussed. So we're looking at very, very minimal data visibility, and we're going to have to make very, very critical business decisions on that. And that's not a great recipe. The minimum stock level told by Amazon sometimes is great. It's sometimes perfect. But at the same time, I've also seen many cases, including my own, where it's wildly inaccurate or wildly unhelpful. So I'm not going to say rely on it. Maybe you can consider it, but you also need to evaluate your inventory on your own as well. So I'm going to go through some examples of what a normal restock cycle goes through for a given product. These charts down here, don't be scared by the charts. Your stock level is the red. It's selling a few units a day, and then you restock, let's say on day 30. Everyone has different restock cycles. Everyone has different lead times. So I'm going to exclude all of those things because there's too many variables to just show in one graph. But in a simple sense, This is a seller that normally stocks, like gets it up to about 40 days of stock. And then once they start running out, hitting about 5 days, more stuff checks in. This is not when they send it in. This is when the stuff checks in. So if you have a 1 week lead time before stuff from shipping in and checking in, you're probably sending in at about 12 days left of stock. Now, does that run pretty low? Sure. Maybe you're above that. Great. But this is an example where this is an approximation. It's not exact. This pink line represents that historical days of stock. Now, at the beginning, you have no problem. You're above that 28-day threshold, this dashed line. But over time, since you're maintaining a lower amount of days of stock, it's pushing that average down. And now, even if you stock up, it's going to be hard to bring that back up because it's a game of averages. It's not a game of snapshots. Now, let's say you take that same exact restock cycle, but instead of stocking 40 days, you stock up to about 65 days, 64, 65 days. And you decide to restock at the, let's say, 37, 38 day point. You're going to maintain above this line. Can you dip below it slightly? That's kind of where this blue line comes into play. Yes, Amazon allows that. Our goal is the average, which is this pink line. The most critical part about this is understanding that it's about maintaining above, not perfection. We're not trying to be perfectly above 28 days. We all know stuff happens with Amazon, and just making sure you always have 28 days is easy until something happens. Your stuff doesn't check in. You have a logistics or a manufacturing problem. You have an Amazon problem. We all deal with those every day. So when we're talking about staying above 28 days, that is very easy when everything goes right. But I'm sure many of us know many scenarios in all of our businesses or the companies we work with where stuff just doesn't go right. So that's why you have to plan ahead and say, hey, well, if I don't get my data every 7 days, then how do I plan for this in real time? So this article focuses on what I call the 5 conundrums. The best way I can put it, the IPI score is wrong. The IPI score optimizes for, I think, about 12 to 14, 12, 13 days of inventory is what they say is excellent. Well, that's a lot less than 28 days. So why does Amazon contradict themselves in this? And I've asked Amazon and they don't know. Or more like they don't respond. Will it likely change the IPI algorithm eventually? Maybe, but your IPI score could be going wrong or going down even though you're optimizing your inventory for this fee. I know, makes no sense, but it is what it is. 7-day curveball. So wouldn't it be handy if this was real-time data? But you're dealing with a delay. So with that 7-day gap of information, you probably need to not run below 28 plus 7 days. So that's what, 35? If you really consider the 29th day, 36. You really, really have to be careful and say, hey, we don't want to dip too low, because if you dip to 28 or 27 days, just barely on your average, you're stuck with that fee incurring for every single unit you ship for the next week, even if you send in 10 truckloads of inventory. New products and seasonal products. When I say new in this sense, this is new to seller, not new to Amazon. New to Amazon is exempt. New to seller, such as a wholesale seller, a reseller, whatever, wouldn't this severely hurt those sellers that are just effectively launching that ASIN under their seller account? What about seasonal products? That's a big question everyone had concerns for. Is like, well, seasonal products, you don't want to stock all year. You don't want to maintain 40 days of stock for Christmas on December 24th. You want to run out for Christmas. Parent ASINs. So now you're not just doing math against every ASIN, but now you have to merge and group by parent ASIN. And for those that have catalog control over their catalogs, what you parent and what you break apart from parents has a huge effect on your FBA fees now. You may decide visually putting all these products together may be great for the customer, but if you have production problems with your bestseller, you might have to move that out of your parentage. A little challenging. And then the so stock too little, pay a fee, stock too much, pay a fee. Where's the balance? Don't you love Amazon? And this is the question that kind of stirred up this whole article. We can all just say, hey, stock more than 29 days. Well, how much more? That is where I get into what I call optimal inventory theory. This theory does not take in every single variable with Amazon, but for the most part, it's focusing on the inventory level fee, the low inventory level fee versus storage fees and long-term storage fees. So to start off, this wonderful chart of an example product. What this is demonstrating is for how many days of inventory you're going to stock, how much fees you're going to incur for a given unit. So for this particular product, the lowest amount of storage fees or low inventory fees that you could incur is about 39-40 cents a unit. If you stock less, you're going to be getting hit with massive low inventory fees. If you stock too much, you're going to be getting hit with too much in storage fees. So you need to find the way to optimize to this point. Now, in a perfect world, we would send in 1 day of inventory every day to maintain 29 days. But that is impossible, unrealistic, and just not practical. So when we look at the longer term view, you can also see here how it skyrockets for long-term storage fees. Amazon is raising the long-term storage fees dramatically, and it even goes up higher beyond the 271 day. So you want to find the balance, but that is underneath these, obviously underneath these, and then where does this line kind of intersect of ideal numbers? Alrighty, so let's highlight here. So the low inventory fee incurs at the 28-day mark. 29, you're past it. But if you're maintaining less than 28 days, or really less than 29, you're going to be getting hit with this, let's say it's 75-cent fee right here, approximately. Well, how much days of inventory can I stock of the same ASIN to incur about the same amount? For this particular product, it is 29 to 54 days. If I stock more than 54 days, I might as well just run too low. If I stock less, that is that golden triangle. It's from here to about here. It's not exact, but you get the point. Now, Q4. We all love how Q4 is always a mountain of curveballs. This is a normal chart for a smaller product. And this one, we can stock quite a bit of stock, about 90 days worth of stock, and it be just perfectly fine. It's cheaper to stock 87 days than it is 28 days. But in Q4, that changes from 90 days to 49 days because storage fees increase dramatically. So now you take all the information you just learned, apply it to your whole year, and then shrink it to make it even more precise in Q4 because your Q4 daily storage fees are substantially higher than the rest of the year. Now, what do we do about this? I showed you some math, some charts, etc. You don't have to understand it all by memory, but let's go back to those 5 conundrums. IPI. Probably don't stock the maximum amount of days, in this case like 90 or 49. Some products, it may be 179 days. Do you need 179 days of stock in Amazon? Probably not. But you don't want it to be too small. Otherwise, you're putting yourself at risk of dipping below that 28-day mark. So I say never dip below 35 days of stock. Reason being, number two, the 7-day rule. You want that 7-day buffer for that data collection where you don't dip below 28 plus 7 because you don't have that visibility during that final week. Now, once again, this is days of stock and a historical average. So you have to factor that in. There are ups and downs, but you want to keep it above 35. Now, number three here is probably one of the biggest questions I had early on when writing this is like, how do seasonal sellers deal with this? I'll start off with product testing. Selling new SKUs, you're just gonna have to budget more, or have a high a very low reaction period to restock. So you can test new products, but make sure you can get additional units into Amazon as fast as possible. Seasonal, however, AWD may be an option, but it may be better to price in the fee than it is to send to AWD. But the best solution to avoid the fee and not have to ship to AWD or price it in is, let's just say your product is an optimal range of 29 to 130 days of stock. Well, if you send your product in 120 days before the holiday, you've now overstocked for that period. Let's just say that is September. I'm just going to use Christmas because it's a very consistent holiday. There's a huge Q4 spike. You send it in September. Well, now they're going to start seeing, wow, you have 2,000 units and you're not selling very much. So your sell-through early on is going to be very, very high. And what you're going to do is boost up your historical days of stock, not your sell-through, early on to where it looks like it's overstocked. And that's going to hold the weight of the averages as you start selling out and running out of stock during Christmas time. Now, with Q4 storage fees, this makes things challenging. I won't deny that. But at the same time, sending it in as early as possible may still be better for a lot of products, because by the time you get to Christmas, you can sell out and not get hit with a fee because the units that you had in September were good. Parent ASINs, once again, super powerful and super dangerous. You could have a product that's bringing down your entire parentage on historical days of stock, and now every single child ASIN will be impacted by the fee. The opposite is also true, though, is if you have an ASIN that is very, very much overstocked, that can help you build in a buffer for the SKUs that you're running low on or having supply chain issues with. So you need to use the ability to add or remove ASINs from parentages beyond just the catalog and merchandising aspect, and also factor in how it impacts your fees. And then stocking optimal quantities. So we talked about up here, 29 to 49 days, 29 to 90 days, and up here is 29 to 54 days. Well, how did I get those numbers? And that's where the math came in. So I built a calculator. It is far from some of the fancy software companies out there, but it works. A few quick notes is this should work on mobile. It should work on desktop. Little finicky sometimes. It takes a little bit to load because there's a lot of math behind it. But I don't have like an ASIN plugin, but if you just put your height, width, and length, shortest to longest, and then your weight in ounces. So for my UK and European friends, I don't think y'all have this fee yet there, so I just focused on the US marketplace. So for a given product that is 6 by 7 by 8 inches, I need to put inches on here, and that is 17 ounces, this item, you need to stock between 29 and 89 days of inventory for optimal levels. Now, you could change these numbers. So let's change this one to 14. Change it from 29 to 64 days. It changes things pretty dramatically. This chart here is also a very good indicator of basically screaming at you saying, do not stock over 271 days of inventory, because this total cost button or total cost column is per unit. It is not for your entire ASIN or all of your inventory. This is all per unit. So I highly doubt anyone wants to pay $37 in storage fees because they have long stock here. You can change these numbers around. It factors in the small standard. So I think this has to be under 12. That adjusts these. And then the last major piece is, what does Q4 do to this? So I'm going to make this back to 8. It does take a little bit of loading sometimes, but if anyone wants to turn this into a tool, it was not easy to build. The last thing I'll show you is the Q4 fees, what difference that makes. The good news is this calculator is free. It's on my website. Obviously, if you have questions, you can contact me. Q4 fees, boom. So we went from a product that you can stock up to 89 days down to 51 days. Now, can you stock more or less? Sure. Just be prepared to pay more in fees. So this one here, you can see roughly 29, this, and if you go across, you should hit about 51. That's where this triangle comes into play. You want to stay in that triangle because that's like the lowest you're going to pay. Pretty much that's it. I have some sources to the Amazon help pages. Once again, I'm going to put a disclaimer on here saying, hey, this ain't perfect. We did find some minor flaws, extremely outlier data, but it is conservative in those estimates and tends not to overestimate. So if you can stay within these numbers for your given product size, you should be doing good. But that is a general summary. I'll stop sharing and we can talk.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add. I mean, you covered everything in depth there. Should we do a quick roundup, though? We've got 6 weeks or so to go out of this podcast, right? Until the fee comes into play. What are some things that people can do, quick wins now, to get that into place?
I highly recommend a couple things. One, everyone has a general average of what their inventory looks like. Yes, some of the larger sellers sell all kinds of different things. Oversize does not apply to this. You read the help pages. There is information in there that I did not highlight specifically in my article because it was just kind of basic. I wanted to highlight what was reading between the lines. So read the articles. Obviously, if you could read my article, that will help you out as well. But find out what your typical inventory is and say, hey, for our products, especially your highest volume ones, your ones that are selling 20 a month, okay, they get a fee, but whatever. But if you're selling a unit for 1,000 units a month, getting a per unit fee on that could be substantial. So highlight your fastest sellers first, highlight your most important products if you're about to launch or something like that. And then with Amazon also implementing new split shipments on March 1st, I highly recommend, because you can know exactly what will happen until March 1st. No one knows exactly what will happen after March 1st. That how your shipments split right now, for the most part, a lot of people ship to 1 FC. I would send in effectively the max level of inventory based on that calculator before March 1st. After March 1st, there may be software, there may be tools, there may be loopholes, but we don't know how that will work. And you could be incurring a lot more inbound shipping costs. And this is a whole nother issue that is unrelated to the low inventory fee. But when we're talking about reacting now, you want to stock up now. Then in March, after you've sent in a bunch of inventory, you want to analyze your whole inventory and see, where are you stocking low? Where have you historically stocked low? Do you need stuff at a 3PL? Do you need stuff a shorter lead time on manufacturing? If you make it in China, what does that lead time look like? Amazon's putting international shipments on a 75-day timeline. So like if it doesn't get checked in 75 days from China, your shipment's going to get closed. It's a big issue. So can it be done? Absolutely. Is it good for maybe a slow boat? Probably not, because there's delays and all that stuff. So you need to understand, what is my current supply chain? Do I work with distributors and wholesalers? Do I work with manufacturers? Do I work with domestic manufacturers? I don't know. Take your whole supply
Oh, in
chain.
the main, most
factor in-
people are shipping from China, right? In the main, with the people that listen to this podcast in our community, in the main, yeah.
Well, it's not just the shipping from China. It's if it ships from China and makes it to the US, well, what is the lead time to get to the FC as well? If you ship to a 3PL and they create a partner carrier shipment, we all know how wonderful a partner carrier can be and take 2 months to check in sometimes. Inbound units aren't factored in. So analyze your supply chain. And then lastly would be, honestly speak to your finance, whether that's you, whether that's your accountant, whether that's your bookkeeper, whoever is involved with the finance part of your business, and say, hey, can we afford to boost up our inventory levels? If you're already above the numbers, great. Just try not to dip below it. If you're kind of on the edge, which I suspect where a lot of people may be at, and maybe they're good for certain products but not for others, that's where you're like, can we afford to boost up our stock? If you have a $2 product, well, you can probably afford that a lot easier than a $200 product.
So another 2 questions for you. Front load stock in, because it doesn't start from the 1st of March, meaning that if you've got stock in there, it calculate what's there. It only starts on anything that you ship in 1st of March or thereafter.
No. So on the reason I mentioned the March 1st thing is there's another change that's coming on March 1st. The entire inbound FBA algorithm. So normally we ship to FTW1. If you're in California, there's a handful of FCs that you most likely ship to. What's happening on March 1st is you would normally ship to one warehouse in your region. So I'm in Texas, I ship to Dallas, makes sense. Now you're going to ship across the entire continental US. So if you're shipping from California to New Jersey, your shipping cost that you're paying the trucking company or Amazon is dramatically more. So that is playing defensive on that change. Then by also getting it in by March, you're boosting up your historical days, because in early March, it gives you that buffer. Then when the fee actually comes into play where they're going to start charging it, you already have slight overstock. I'm not saying send in 2 years worth of inventory, but slight overstock to allow you to truly evaluate your own inventory, because you've had a month of slight overstock. And then you need to restock in an appropriate amount of time based on your supply chain.
Cool. And the parentage, there was a second question. Now, with that, what would you say? Because you mentioned that the parentage could be, the parent could be holding it down in terms of weighing it down, or it could be the siblings, could be weighing it down. How would you manage that in a technical sense? You got little hacks, so you manage that. The seller spots it and goes, okay, I'll move that child out of this variation, etc. What would you say is the best way to manage that if you're looking at it in that way? Because it's one thing to say, the parent's dragging it down, but what would you do in your situation to manipulate that, for better words?
So I have 2 pieces to that. One, everyone's parentage, I don't care if you're selling shoes, groceries, whatever, everyone's parentage probably has one ASIN that is your best one. Like it's disproportionately better in some categories.
Well, it's the 80-20, isn't it? Like there's always going to be the top performers, a few of those, the top 20%.
Exactly. So if your top performer, you're staying in stock really well, it almost doesn't even matter what the other ones are doing. They're not even going to be able to drag it down very much because that top performer. The problem is if you're having a problem with your top performer, your other ones, let's say the top performer is holding the weight of all of the ace, like most of the data.
Or it gets suspended. So there's no history on that one as it's suspended. The rest are not got anything to latch onto in terms of holding it down.
Exactly. So if your stock levels are amazing for your best seller and your other ones are kind of iffy, like, you're running a little not a big deal until something happens. And really, we deal with Amazon. So one, you need to be able to collect some data. I'm not saying it needs to be perfect at the child ASIN level, which Amazon does not provide, which is very, very annoying. Call out to all software companies, start developing. However, what you need to do is watch your top ASINs and say, hey, if this whole parentage is being brought down because our top ASINs are struggling to stay in stock, maybe you pull those out of that parentage. Or the opposite is also true. It's say, hey, this parentage is doing pretty weak. Let me put in a product that has great stock levels, or I don't know, 500 days of stock, not ideal, but put that in there, add that to the mix, and that can really, really help. But what you really need to focus on is your heavy hitters, your 80-20. What is the 20% of ASINs that are holding most of the percentage of the weight? And make sure that those are staying in stock. And if they're running too low, you don't want their negative impact to spread to the child ASIN. So pull it out of that parentage and then put it back in when it makes sense.
That was excellent. Thanks, James. There's very detailed. There was so much information there. I think people would have to make notes and go back through. So just to summarize, top 5 things, and then we'll disappear. We're coming up to about 36 minutes now. Just for people to summarize, if they've been note taking along the way, top 5 things to take away from this podcast.
Sure. Biggest, I think we'll start one. You now cannot blindly rely on Amazon to know your stock levels. You need to understand it at the per ASIN level. A lot of what Amazon's giving us is very weak data. 2, you need to stock more on average. Because it is, if we take a product like pens and pencils, I could show you the graph, but throw an ASIN that is 2 pens, and the size on there will say it is better to stock 179 days of data or days of inventory than it is to stock 28, because the storage fees for a pen or 2 pens is so small. It's not even worth mentioning that low inventory fee. It's better to overstock. So naturally, I'm going to say most people can afford to overstock a little bit more. Depends on your product size. 3, if you sell seasonal or have seasonal components to your catalog, this is going to require more planning. You need to plan ahead. You need to send it in sooner. Yes, you're going to be paying more in storage fees potentially, but would you rather pay predictable storage fees or unpredictable low inventory fees that could potentially cost more? Then I think that's kind of the main summary. I don't know if I have 5, but that should get people started.
That's good enough. James, what's the best way they can reach you? Also, I'll put the show note in the show notes. The URL will be there, access to the article and the calculator to help fulfill the notes, because people will need to take notes to make this really work and put some planning ahead of them, because obviously people are struggling at the moment with margin and stuff, and this isn't going to help. So people need to be really on top of it. They're going to need it. Look, it's workable, but they need to be on top of their game. And if they understand this, they might do a quick run through, 2 or 3 times, make some notes, etc. Best way for people to reach you if they've got any questions for you also.
Yeah, so happy to help people wherever I can on most of the social media platforms, either as James Universe or my name, James McConnell Jr., LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Also my website, Marketplace Prep. You can use the contact form there as well. I'm going to try to help as many people as possible with this, but feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Guys, also don't forget, grab a ticket for Seller Sessions Live, May 11th. We're down to the general admission now. We've got some tickets left for Steve Simonson's workshop, which is around leadership. And then we've got some tickets left for Brandon Young's AI product workshop and development. So there's a lot of innovation going on there in terms of product development, a lot of stuff that Brandon does to release roughly 100 products or so a year. Go to sellersessions.com/live 2024. I'll be back here again next week. James, again, thank you. Sharon will be back in the chair very soon. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and then I'll see you again soon.